McClelland's Royal Cajun Dark. I think I've done a video on the other two blends in this series. Ebony, Special, and now Dark.
A blend of 5 exceptional red and stove Virginias seasoned liberally with cool, subtly smoky Cajun Black, which is McClelland's own sort of version of Perique that they did a number of years back. An incredible smoking experience. Deeply rich in flavor, compelling in aroma, exquisitely mild on the palate. Amazing. Try our other first-in-the-world Cajun Black blends, Special and Ebony.
Yeah. And if you remember, I really enjoyed those other two blends. They were both pretty similar. I'd say very similar, really. And the things with those blends were, the flavor for me was like the perfect flavor. I just love it. It reminded me a lot of a flavor called tamarindo. It's like a fruit, kind of, I guess, that I grew up with in Mexico. Really sort of tangy, sweet and tangy. I guess almost sort of like a plum, but more sour and more tangy. And those blends just had this amazing flavor. And the tin note was the exact same. You pop it open and I could just sit there and just taking whiffs after whiff after whiff. And the smoke was just the same, and it was great. But the problem was that those blends just sort of died out, like mid-bowl or before mid-bowl. And then it was just sort of like a soulless, empty smoke for the last half of the bowl. And even with that, which normally would be a real turnoff for me, the first half or first third was so good that I really enjoyed those blends. And I smoked through those tins really fast, faster than almost every other tin I smoked. So I was excited to pop this baby open a couple days ago. Now this blend in the series, Dark, is quite a bit different in its composure, its flavor, and sort of even its deepness to it is quite a bit different. It's much deeper. It's got more of a earthier, more of a smokier flavor, less sweet, although by itself, if you're not comparing it to the other two in the series, would be considered, I think, pretty sweet. Even though it's not aromatic. It's just that that version, what do they call it? The Cajun Dark, or Royal Cajun, I think. Cajun Dark, I think, is what they called their version of Perique. Is really sweet. But this one, I think the other ones had some lighter Virginias, and this one's more of the red Virginia, and so it gives you more of that earthier, more of that breadier flavor. And it's a little bit darker, almost like it's got some dark fired in there, some like burley-esque, not really burley, it's sort of like a Kentucky, dark fired Kentucky flavor to it, which is nice. I like it. At first, I was a little disappointed because I was looking for what I had in those other two blends, and it was a bit different. Although it was still there, and you could tell it's in the same family. But this would be like, for example, I'm one of 3 brothers, hence my name on Instagram is Third Brother. I'm the youngest of 3. And of course we're all alike, and we have our similarities, and you can tell that we're brothers. But there is one of us that is quite different than the other. And he's just different, not to say that he's worse or better or whatnot, of course. And it's a bit that way in this blend, the dark one. It's good in its own right. The tobaccos are great. They burn wonderfully. They produce a lot of smoke, which I like, a lot of white smoke. But the flavor is deeper. It's more nuanced, and it lasts longer. It does change a little bit. After a few minutes, it gets really dark, and you think, "Oh, great, where's this going?" And then it sort of holds off. It seems like it's going to do a nosedive, and then it comes back up, and it remains pretty steady for the last half of the bowl. So I don't know if this is still available anywhere. if any of these Royal Cajun blends are, I'd like to try to pick them up. Sad to see McClelland's going, but it is what it is. So that's Royal Cajun Dark. And I'll show it to you if I can. It is very dark, just like the other ones. It looks almost all black. And a bit chunky. Now I want to also talk about where I'm at today. Another dark place, dark time, and dark times. Sort of, well, as you can see, I'm standing amongst some stones. These are gravestones, grave markers. And I'm standing in a park. Well, what is now a park, what used to be a Jewish cemetery. Sometime around 1995, the city here, Colombia, took half the park. They didn't do anything with it, but they just renamed half the park as the Jewish Memorial Cemetery. And it's a pretty sad place. It's obviously very neglected. I'll try to show you around a bit. Just a bunch of trash. Cigarettes, cigarette cartons, packs, vodka bottles, beer bottles, trash, poop. It's all here. Needles. And I'm going to go out on a limb here and say 95% of all the grave markers are just laying around, trashed, being vandalized, broken. That's the state of this park. It's pretty sad to look at. And I've walked through a few times and wondered about it. And so when I started to do some research on the place, came to find out that in this area of Ukraine and in this city, small city, now I think there's something around 60,000 people here. At one point in the 1700s, all the way up into about 1800, mid 1800s, half of the population here was Jewish. Well-respected Jewish community. But the Jews here, as well as in many parts of the world, right, have been hated and tortured and murdered and kicked out and not respected. The Jews had a few cemeteries here in town. And when the Soviets came in, they gathered all the gravestones, grave markers from around town, and they moved them here to this location. They didn't do anything with them, they just piled them up all in one spot. And in fact, I'll do another video sometime of a couple other places here in town. And for example, there's a central square where there was a statue of Lenin for many years. In the 90s, early 90s, 92, maybe even before, I think before Ukrainian independence, probably sometime in the late 80s, 88, 89, something like that, the people of this town tore down the Lenin statue, and what they found underneath were Jewish graves. And ironically enough, what they decided to do was put a statue of Shevchenko, the sort of Ukrainian national hero. And he's there today. That's one spot. For example, another spot is sort of the city hall. It's called Ratusha. It's a big tower in City Hall. Well, on the property there were also found a few hundred grave markers. Those were all moved here. Also, pretty close to the city center is a building which is a private building now, but when the Germans were here, it was the Gestapo headquarters. And on the site of that building was also found hundreds of grave markers and a mass burial grave. So those were all moved here, and this was sort of the designated area for that. When German forces came, 17,000 something, I forget the actual number, more than 17,000 Jews were executed, and another 3,200, I believe, were sent to working camps. So that's sort of the background. And today, what is this place? Today, it's run down, it's not kept up, people don't use it as a park, all they do is walk through it. There's no benches, there's no really trail. I guess there's one sort of brick road going through, brick walking trail, and that's it. A lot of crows. And interesting enough, when I started reading about the park, I found out that starting a few years back, there's been quite a few problems here with vandalism. We'll put it that way. In this cemetery, it's claimed that there's 6 Jewish holy men that are buried. And the Jewish community wants to restore the park. And they say that the city, when they named it Jewish Memorial Park, that they gave the Jewish community rights to upkeep and do a renovation and not take control. They don't own it at all. There we go. My camera's falling. But to do something with the park and to take care of it. When they started to do that, they didn't get permission. So they say they had permission. Now people are saying, well, we just renamed it. That doesn't give you permission, right? They closed the park to do work on it. And they have a big plan, and they have sponsors from around the world. But people put up a fit. They don't like the Jews, and they didn't like what they're doing. And they said, you can't mess with our park. This is our city park. What are you doing? This is not your cemetery. This is a park. So the city closed the whole place down for a while to figure it out. And they reopened it. Some people came in and they burned down a little shack here. And they broke some markers. And they actually did that 3 times. And there's an outstanding reward, I guess. Is that what you call it? A 10,000 hryvnia reward, which is pretty much like a 2 to 3 months worth salary reward for anybody that has any information about who did it. But nobody's coming forward. Another thing that these people did was they came in and they tried to burn down this little building that they built around one of the graves, which is for one of the holy men. And they erected a big wooden cross. Yeah. And when I was just thinking about all this, all of a sudden one of my friends comes up to me and he says, hey, did you hear that the day after tomorrow there's going to be like a community hearing in the town hall where we can come and voice our opinions about what to do with the park and whatnot. So that's that. People are still angry, and the overall majority are, people are angry. They said, this is our park, what are these Jews doing here? This isn't them, that was years ago. Forget about it. Let's go this way. All right. So here we are on sort of the main little path that goes through the park. Or the cemetery, whatever you want to call it. there they are, broken, just laying around. You can see them sort of back there too, in the grass. They're just laying around. So, there you go. Alright, now that I'm pretty much soaked, I'll be making my way home. Alright guys, I wish you the best, be well, and love truly.